This is a video by Richmond. Today we're working on a Dodge Neon. This one happens to be a 2002 model. And what we're doing today is we're changing the timing belt. Now the first thing we need to do is jack up the vehicle, support it on jack stands, take the right front tire wheel assembly off, and then we need to take off this plastic splash panel that was underneath here. It's held on by three 10mm headed bolts. Okay, the next thing we need to do is to find top dead center on the engine. Now what I did here is I took number one spark plug out, I got the compression gauge in. Now, then I rotated the engine by the crank pulley, and then I watched the needle on the compression gauge. Now as it started to move up, then I knew that I was on the compression stroke. Now to find top dead center, what I did is I put a piece of dowel in through the spark plug hole, and it's on top of the piston. Now as I rotate the piston up, when the dowel stops moving, we will know that we have reached top dead center. Right there. That's good. Next we need to get a jack underneath the engine and support it. Now after you get that jack underneath the engine, you can take out this 18mm head bolt and this one right here, and you can take this top engine mount out of the way. Now we can take the serpentine belt out of the way. You'll use a 17mm open end wrench, and there's a lug right down on the tensioner. You'll see it, and that wrench will fit right on there. And just pull back, and you can take the belt off of the crank pulley down here and release the tensioner. Now you can get the belt off. Next we need to get the belt that goes up to the alternator off the crank pulley, and we need to just loosen this bottom pivot bolt first. Now from the top, next thing we need to do is to loosen this jam nut and then back off on the adjuster so the alternator goes forward. Then we can get the belt off. Next we need to take off this 19mm bolt that holds on the crankshaft pulley. Now if you don't have an impact, probably you want to take that off before you take the belts off. Next you want to go down to your local auto parts store and pick up a puller made just for Chryslers. In my case I went to AutoZone and picked up this one right here, which is part number 27139. Okay, now when you put your pulley on, just put it on without the screw first. It goes in a lot easier. Then you can slide your pin in. Then you can turn the screw in. Okay, now what you'll do is you'll back it up with your wrench and then use your 24mm socket with your breaker bar, and then you'll turn it out to the head just about bottoms out, and it still won't take the pulley out. And what we're going to do is we're going to put a little spacer in there to get it out the rest of the way because they didn't make the pin long enough. Okay, we need to extend the range of that pin. So I've made a 1/2 inch long piece of 5/16 rod. Slip that in there like that. And we will keep pulling with that extension. Okay, we almost got the pulley off. And there it is. Get that pin out of there. Okay. And there's our pulley. Next we need to take off this 18mm headed bolt that secures the bottom torque strut to the engine. Now be wary about that. When you take that out, the engine is going to cock backwards. Now I have a piece of cable supporting the engine, so it won't do that. So I won't jump on you. Next we need to take the top radiator hose off. You can drain the coolant, or you can do what I'm going to do, just have a bucket underneath there to catch the fluid that's going to come out, and slide this clamp back, and then you can slide the hose off. You're not going to lose that much. Okay, now we got this 10mm headed bolt that's holding on this ground wire and the clamp to this power steering lines. We'll take that off now. Next we need to remove the power steering pump from the bracket and set it over to the side. Now in the back here, you'll see two 13mm headed bolts down here, right there, and we need to remove those. Now on the pulley side, you'll see some holes that are in the pulley, and you'll take your socket and you go in through the hole like such, and you'll find 3 of these bolts you need to remove. One is here up about 12 o'clock, and I believe one is at 9 and 6 o'clock down there. And you can rotate your pulley to get those. Now after you get all the bolts that secure it to the bracket, we need to remove the bracket from the engine. Now if you look right there, you can see a 15mm headed bolt that secures the bracket to the engine. We need to remove that one. And if you look down here, right there, you can see another 15mm headed bolt. And we need to remove those now. Okay, now that we got all our brackets out of the way, we should be able to get the pump out. It's still going to be tight coming out. And we can just set it right there on top of the engine out of the way. Next we need to pop this little plastic cover off the access hole to get at the bolt for the right motor mount. Now that bolt is held on by a T55 Torx. Now jack up the jack that you have underneath the engine so you take the pressure off of this bolt so that it will come out easy for you. And there it is. Next you want to lower the engine so you can remove this bottom engine mount bolt. It's a long one. And now we can jack the engine back up to get the other 2 bolts in that mount. Now to gain the extra height of jacking up the engine, I had to take the bottom radiator hose off the radiator. There's just one spring clamp. Squeeze it, pull it back, and just take the hose off. Okay, now you want to jack up the engine so you can get this mount up in the air. And here is one bolt that has to be removed here, and this one right back there. You can see it right there. Now, let's see, we can remove that bolt there. Now just pull the AC line over a little bit, just to give you enough of room to squeeze that out. Real tight fit. Next we need to take off these 2 8mm headed bolts that hold on the bottom of the plastic timing cover. Okay, after you get those 2 bottom bolts out of the way, you can just unsnap the top of the cover and remove the plastic timing cover. Okay, you want to lower the engine and put your crankshaft bolt back in so you can rotate the engine. Paint your marks. Make sure the crankshaft mark is still lined up, and go up above and check your cam mark. Make sure that that is lined up. And if they are, now you can take off your timing belt. There is a bolt right down here in the tensioner, and you'll loosen that and remove your timing belt. Now, after you've loosened the 13mm nut here that holds the tensioner adjustment, take your 16mm Allen wrench and put it into the adjuster here, and then rotate it clockwise like so till you have enough room to get your belt off. Now, before installing your belt, you want to rotate the crankshaft sprocket here counterclockwise about 3 teeth, and then bring it back to within half a tooth of its original position before you install your new belt. Now, once you get the belt on, rotate the crankshaft clockwise so the marks line back up. What you're going to do is you're going to turn that extra half a tooth to take the slack out of the belt here. Then what you'll do is take the Allen wrench here and move the tensioner counterclockwise, and you can see it tightening up on the belt. And then what you'll do is you'll get your mirror down there so you can see those marks. You want to see the tolerance window in the spring, and of course you want to line them up, and when they're lined up, tighten that 13mm nut. It's about 22 foot-pounds of torque on that. Okay, now we want to set our belt and double check our marks to make sure they're correct. What you want to do is now rotate that crankshaft 2 revolutions and bring the crankshaft mark back up to the mark on the oil pump housing. And the camshaft mark should line up. If it's not, you'll have to take the belt off and reposition it. Now you want to check the tensioner too and make sure that that spring is in the tolerance window. If it's not, you need to readjust that also. Okay, I just rotated it 2 revolutions. The marks all lined up. The tensioner was in the tolerance window. So that's it. The timing belt's all in. Now we just have to put everything back together, our mounts, power steering, put all that back together. Now to install the pulley, what I've got here is a 110mm bolt. It's longer than the original, which is around 80mm long. And we're going to use that and draw it in. Now, once you draw it in, you can use the original bolt and put some Loctite on there. Together, and that's it. We just replaced a timing belt on our Dodge Neon.